Have you ever wondered why some people seem to attract love effortlessly, while others constantly struggle? Today we're going to reveal the deepest secret that Carl Jung, one of history's most influential psychologists, discovered about love and relationships. And I'll tell you something, what you're about to hear could completely transform your love life. Imagine this for a moment. You're in a relationship where you give everything. You try your hardest. You do everything possible to please that special person. And yet you feel something's missing, that no matter how hard you try, it's never enough. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. And most importantly, it's not your fault. According to Jung, there's one thing, just one fundamental mistake you're making that's sabotaging all your relationships. A mistake so common that almost all of us make it without realizing. And that's precisely what we're going to explore today. But first, let me ask you, when was the last time you looked in the mirror and asked yourself if you're living the life you truly want? Not the one others expect from you, not the one that seems right to others, but the one that truly resonates with your soul. The modern world is designed to keep us distracted, trapped in routines, expectations, and commitments that seem inevitable. But here's the truth, few dare to face. Every time you choose others over yourself, you're telling your inner self that it doesn't matter enough. You're ignoring that quiet voice that, from the depths of your unconscious, is trying to guide you toward a more authentic life. And here's Jung's revelation that will forever change your perspective. Never, under any circumstances, should you abandon yourself if you want someone to truly fall in love with you. Sounds contradictory, right? We've been taught that love means sacrifice, that we should put others first, that giving everything for another person is how we show love. But Jung discovered something fascinating. The more you abandon yourself to please someone else, the less attractive you become in their eyes. Jung developed the concept of the individuation process, which is essentially the journey of self-discovery that each of us must undertake. According to him, this process is fundamental not only for our psychological development, but also for our ability to form authentic and deep relationships. When you sacrifice your essence, when you ignore your needs and desires, when you repress parts of yourself to please another person, you're sending a very clear message. I don't value myself enough. And if you don't value yourself, how can you expect someone else to do so? Think about the relationships you've had until now. How many times have you said yes when you really wanted to say no? How many times have you ignored your own needs to satisfy your partners? And what result have you gotten? Probably, you've felt increasingly empty, more frustrated, and, paradoxically, less loved. Jung explained that our connection with the unconscious, that deep part of our psyche that contains our most authentic desires, fears, and potentials, isn't optional. It's an essential part of who we are. However, we often ignore its signals because facing them can be uncomfortable. That feeling of discomfort you experience when something isn't right in your life isn't a coincidence. It's your soul speaking to you, showing you that there's something you need to change, even though you fear doing it. Jung called this the call of the soul, and he believed that ignoring it was one of the gravest mistakes we can make. Now, reflect on the decisions you've made lately in your relationships. How many of them truly came from a place of authenticity? And how many were driven by fear of loneliness, the need for approval, or simply not wanting to cause discomfort? Jung invites us to consider something revolutionary. Decisions that don't come from your inner truth not only harm you, but also damage your relationships. Because when you act from a place that isn't authentic, you're creating a connection based on an illusion, not on truth. And illusions, sooner or later, fade away. What really attracts people to you isn't your ability to please them, but your authenticity. There's something magnetic about someone who knows who they are and lives according to their values. Jung explained this through the concept of an aura of authenticity, that almost palpable energy that emanates from those who have chosen themselves. But what does it mean exactly to choose yourself? Contrary to what many think, it's not about selfishness or ignoring others' needs. It's about recognizing that to give your best, you first need to be at peace with yourself. This is the fundamental principle of self-love that Jung deeply explored. For him, self-love isn't a luxury or an excuse to avoid responsibilities. It's the foundation from which all meaningful and authentic relationships can flourish. When you choose to prioritize yourself, something changes deeply in your energy. You begin to attract people and situations that align with your essence. It's as if the universe responds to your decision to live in truth, eliminating what doesn't serve you and bringing what you truly need. But to get there, you must first face your shadows, those parts of yourself that you've ignored, repressed, or feared. Jung spoke of the shadow as that aspect of our psyche that contains everything we prefer not to see about ourselves. Often, in our romantic relationships, we project these shadows onto our partner. We attribute characteristics to them that are actually ours, but that we don't want to recognize. This mechanism, which Jung called projection, is one of the main saboteurs of relationships. For example, if you have difficulty setting boundaries, you might attract controlling people. If you fear your own ambition, you might feel attracted to very successful people. And if you repress your sensuality, you might become obsessed with people who freely express their sexuality. These projections create relationships based on fantasies, not reality. And although they may initially seem intense and passionate, they eventually become unsustainable because what you're really looking for isn't in the other person, but within yourself. Jung taught us that to have authentic relationships, we must first integrate our shadows. This means recognizing and accepting all parts of ourselves, even those that make us uncomfortable or ashamed. Because when you stop fighting them and learn to accept them, you discover an inner power you never imagined you had. This integration process doesn't happen overnight. It requires courage, patience, and an unwavering willingness to know yourself. But what you gain in return is invaluable. Clarity, purpose, and an inner peace that no one can take away from you. You gain the ability to say no when something doesn't resonate with you, without fear of what others might think. And above all, you gain the freedom to be who you truly are. This freedom, according to Jung, is the basis of any truly satisfying relationship. Now, how do you start this path toward authenticity? The answer is simpler than it seems. Begin by listening to yourself. Whenever you feel discomfort, doubt, or even an intense emotion, stop and ask yourself what your unconscious is trying to tell you. Jung believed that all the answers we seek outside are already within us. We just need the courage to listen to them and act accordingly. This is probably one of the hardest things we do in life, listening to our intuition, especially when it leads us in a direction that challenges what we've built. Maybe it's a relationship you know no longer works, but that you cling to out of fear of loneliness. Or maybe it's a self-destructive pattern, like repeatedly choosing partners who aren't emotionally available. Whatever it is, Jung reminds us that ignoring these signals isn't an act of strength, but a denial of our true essence. Choosing yourself means having the courage to let go of what no longer resonates with you. This isn't always easy. Often we cling to toxic relationships because change scares us. We convince ourselves that the devil we know is better than risking the unknown. But Jung challenges us to see change as a door, not an ending. A door to a more authentic version of ourselves and therefore to more authentic relationships. Think about it. What are you holding on to in your life that no longer serves you? What relationships have you maintained out of fear of letting them go? Perhaps you feel that letting go of certain people would be a loss. But the real loss occurs when you sacrifice your inner peace to maintain something that no longer makes sense. Choosing yourself isn't selfishness. It's an act of love and respect for who you are. And paradoxically, it's also the foundation of any healthy, loving relationship. Because if you can't love yourself, how can you truly love someone else? Jung described authentic love not as fusion or loss of identity, but as an encounter between two complete individualities, two people who have chosen themselves, and precisely because of that, can choose each other from a place of fullness, not lack. When you finally choose yourself, something magical happens in your relationships. You begin to see clearly what was once clouded. The people who truly support you stay, while those who drained your energy disappear. This isn't a coincidence. It's the reflection of an internal change. Jung called it synchronicity, that connection between your inner and outer world that aligns everything when you decide to live in coherence with your truth. But this process also requires you to be honest with yourself. Sometimes choosing yourself means admitting that you've made decisions that don't reflect who you truly are. Perhaps you've allowed certain people to cross your boundaries, or you've said yes to things you knew you should reject. This isn't a reason to judge yourself, but an opportunity to learn, recalibrate, and choose again. Jung believed that authenticity isn't a state you achieve once and for all. It's a continuous journey, a process of learning and growth, and on that path you'll face resistance. There will be moments when you doubt yourself, when you'll be tempted to return to old patterns just because they're comfortable. But in those moments, remember that true growth happens outside your comfort zone. The world won't always understand your decision to choose yourself. There will be those who criticize you, who question your choices, and even those who distance themselves because you no longer fit their expectations. This can be painful, but it's also liberating. Because when you choose yourself, you stop seeking external validation. You understand that your worth doesn't depend on what others think of you, but on what you think of yourself. And here's the most beautiful paradox Jung discovered. When you stop needing others' approval, that's when you receive it the most. This doesn't mean you should live isolated or disconnected from others. On the contrary, when you choose yourself, your relationships transform. You no longer seek approval, but connection. You no longer settle for superficial relationships, but seek bonds that nourish your soul. And in the process, you discover that the right people will always be by your side, not because they need you, but because they value you as you are. This is the kind of love that Jung considered true, not a love based on need or dependency, but a love that arises from mutual recognition of the other's authenticity. When you start living from your authenticity, the world around you changes. This isn't magic or a trick. It's the profound connection between your inner and outer world. Jung spoke of how our psyche projects onto the exterior everything we carry within. If you live in conflict with yourself, you'll attract conflicts. If you reject yourself, you'll attract rejection. But if you choose yourself, if you accept yourself as you are, you'll begin to notice how circumstances and people around you also change. This transformation doesn't happen immediately. It's a process, and like any process, it requires patience and commitment. There will be days when you'll feel like you're going backward, moments when your old habits will try to return. But here is where the true test lies, in your ability to remain firm in your decision to choose yourself, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's lonely. Jung saw these difficulties not as obstacles, but as opportunities to strengthen your connection with your true self. Choosing yourself won't always be understood by those around you. We live in a world that values sacrifice, giving everything for others, even at the cost of our well-being. But Jung taught us that we cannot give what we don't have. If you sacrifice your happiness, your energy, or your inner peace to please others, what you're offering isn't authentic, and sooner or later, that imbalance will manifest. The true love never asks you to annul yourself. Reflect on your current relationships. How many of them make you feel inspired, motivated, and at peace? And how many leave you exhausted, confused, or even empty? Jung invites us to consider this because our relationships aren't simply social connections, but mirrors of our inner state. The people we choose to have close reflect the beliefs and values we carry within. If you allow someone to cross your boundaries again and again, it's not because that person is bad, but because there's a part of you that still hasn't learned to protect itself. Protecting your energy isn't a selfish act. It's an act of self-love. Jung believed that the unconscious is always working to guide us toward our well-being, but we often ignore its signals. That feeling of exhaustion you feel after interacting with certain people isn't a coincidence. It's your unconscious telling you that relationship isn't aligned with your essence. And if you decide to ignore that signal, the cost will always be your inner peace. Choosing yourself implies establishing boundaries. And boundaries aren't walls to keep people out, but bridges that allow for more authentic and healthy relationships. When you say no to what doesn't serve you, you're saying yes to your truth, your dreams, and your well-being. This doesn't mean you should cut ties with everyone, but that you need to be honest with yourself about which relationships nourish you and which drain you. Jung called this psychological discrimination, the ability to discern what's good for you from what isn't. As you begin to live from this authenticity, something wonderful happens. Your intuition becomes stronger. That inner voice that once seemed weak or confused begins to guide you with more clarity. You start making decisions that not only make logical sense, but also feel right deep in your being. This is the power of choosing yourself. It reconnects you with your intuition, with that inner compass that has always been there, waiting for you to trust it. Jung considered intuition as one of the purest forms of connection with the unconscious. It's that feeling you have when something simply feels right or doesn't feel right. But to listen to it, you need to silence the external noise. This means stopping the search for others' approval, disconnecting from social expectations, and learning to trust yourself. Because at the end of the day, no one else can know what's best for you. When you decide to choose yourself, you're sending a clear message to the universe. I'm ready to live from my truth. And the universe responds. You begin to attract people, opportunities, and experiences that align with who you truly are. This doesn't mean everything will be perfect or that you won't face challenges, but those challenges will no longer feel like a constant struggle. Instead, there'll be opportunities to grow and strengthen yourself. When you decide to live from your authenticity, you also begin to experience what Carl Jung described as synchronicity. Those seemingly casual events that fit perfectly into your life are a manifestation of your internal alignment. When you choose yourself and decide to honor your truth, the universe seems to conspire in your favor. The right opportunities arrive, the right people appear, and everything begins to flow in a way that previously seemed unattainable. But this doesn't mean the path will be free of obstacles. In fact, often, the greatest challenges arise just when you decide to choose yourself. It's as if the world, accustomed to the compliant version of you, tries to test your commitment to this new path. Here is where your power lies, because every time you reaffirm your decision, every time you choose your inner peace over external demands, you're strengthening that connection with your true self. The key is to remain firm, even when doubts appear. It's normal to feel fear when leaving behind the familiar, even if you know it no longer serves you. But remember this, every time you choose to stay in a place that doesn't make you happy, you're closing the door to something that could transform you. Jung taught us that change doesn't happen without resistance, but that resistance isn't a sign that you're wrong, but that you're moving forward. The individuation process, that journey toward authenticity, always involves facing obstacles. One of the most powerful ways to overcome that resistance is to reflect on what you truly value. What's most important to you? What kind of life do you want to build? What kind of relationships do you wish to have? When you have clarity in your values and goals, it becomes easier to make decisions that align with them. And in doing so, you begin to attract people and situations that share that same energy. It's important to remember that you're not alone on this journey. Although choosing yourself may seem like a solitary act at first, you're actually building a path that will attract the right people. Those who support you, who celebrate you, and who are willing to walk with you. These people don't need you to change to fit into their lives. They accept you as you are because they too have chosen to live from their truth. When you reach this point, something within you changes forever. Life no longer feels like a constant struggle. Decisions that once seemed impossible are now made with clarity and confidence. And most importantly, you find a sense of peace that doesn't depend on external factors. Because, as Jung taught us, true peace can only come from within. That inner peace is the result of honoring your needs, respecting your boundaries, and living in coherence with your values. But it's also a gift you can share with the world. When you live from your authenticity, you inspire others to do the same. Your courage becomes a beacon for those who are seeking their own path. And in this process, you not only transform your life, but also impact those around you in a deep and meaningful way. Think for a moment about what your love life would be like if you could let go of everything that doesn't serve you. How would your relationships be if you set aside destructive patterns, irrational fears, and unrealistic expectations? Imagine the freedom, the lightness, and the clarity you could experience. Imagine attracting into your life people who see you, who value you, and who love you for who you truly are, not for who they pretend you to be. This isn't an unattainable dream. It's a real possibility that's within your reach if you decide to choose yourself. When you make this decision, you begin to realize that you're not losing anything by letting go of what doesn't resonate with you. Instead, you're gaining space for what truly matters. You're creating a life that not only makes sense, but also fills you with purpose and joy. This is the gift that Jung wanted us all to discover. That true transformation begins when we stop seeking outside what has always been within. When you choose to live from your authenticity, something extraordinary happens in your relationships. You begin to attract people who are on the same path as you. People who have also chosen to be authentic, who aren't afraid to show themselves as they are. These relationships are different from anything you've experienced before. They're deep, nourishing, and above all, real. They aren't based on unrealistic expectations or predefined roles, but on a mutual recognition of the other's uniqueness. Jung called this the meeting of souls, that connection that transcends the superficial and touches the deepest part of our being. And the most beautiful thing is that this type of connection is only possible when both people have chosen themselves first. So if you truly want someone to fall in love with you, stop trying to be what you think that person wants. Stop sacrificing your essence to please. Stop ignoring your needs, your desires, and your dreams. Instead, choose to know yourself. Choose to face your fears and your shadows. Choose to live from your truth, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's challenging. Because the only way to attract true love is by being true to yourself first. And this, my friend, is the most valuable teaching that Jung left us about love and relationships. So the next time you find yourself at the crossroads between pleasing someone else or honoring your truth, remember, never under any circumstances abandon yourself. Because when you choose yourself, you're also choosing the possibility of authentic and transformative love. And now, I'd like you to reflect on what you've heard today. What aspects of your life are in alignment with yourself? What can you let go of to live with greater authenticity? Remember that each small step counts, and you're not alone on this journey. This channel is here to support you, to remind you of your potential, and to guide you on your path toward a more authentic and fulfilling life. If this message resonated with you, I invite you to share it with someone who needs it. Someone who is also seeking answers or facing a difficult stage in their relationships. Every time you share this type of content, you're helping to create a world where more people dare to be authentic. And that, my friend, is truly transformative. Leave your opinion in the comments. Tell me which part of this message touched your heart, or how you plan to choose yourself from now on. Your experience isn't only valuable to me, but also to everyone who is on a similar path. And if you haven't done so yet, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to not miss more content like this. Together, we can create a community of people committed to living from their authenticity and attracting relationships that truly deserve. Remember, true love doesn't ask you to abandon yourself. On the contrary, it invites you to be more you, more authentic, more true. And that's the most beautiful paradox of all, that only when you completely choose yourself can you truly give yourself completely to another. Thank you for being here, for listening, and above all, for having the courage to question yourself, to grow, and to transform. The world needs more people who have the courage to be themselves, to live from their truth, and to love from authenticity. See you in the next video. And never forget that the most important relationship you'll have in your life is the one you have with yourself. Take care of it, nurture it, and you'll see how all other relationships flourish.